The neon signs of downtown Nashville flickered through the rain-soaked windshield as Marcus Chen gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the black leather. It was 2:47 a.m., and he had just left another empty night at the Honky Tonks on Broadway, his third DUI stop narrowly avoided by charm and a hefty bribe. The man staring back at him in the rearview mirror was a stranger. Hollow eyes, graying stubble, and a soul that had long since stopped believing in anything beyond the next high, the next deal, the next hollow conquest. What you're about to read isn't just another redemption story. This is the raw, unfiltered account of how a man who had become darkness itself found a light he never thought possible. If you've ever felt too far gone, too broken, too lost, stay with me, because what happened in Davidson County, Tennessee, would change not just my life, but challenge everything I thought I knew about hope, faith, and the impossible. I grew up in Jefferson County, Kentucky, just outside Louisville, in a modest two-bedroom house where my mother, Jennifer, worked double shifts at the hospital, and my father had left before I could form memories of his face. The Ohio River was my playground, and Churchill Downs was where dreams were made, or so everyone said. But my dreams were different. I wanted power. I wanted control. I wanted to never feel the sting of poverty again. By 16, I was running substances for local dealers in the West End. By 20, I had my own operation spanning 3 counties. By 25, I was moving product from Harris County, Texas, all the way to Cook County, Illinois. The money flowed like the Mississippi River, endless, powerful, and corrupting everything in its path. I bought a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. I wore watches worth more than most people's houses. Women came and went like seasons, and I felt nothing. My heart had become a vault, locked tight, with the combination lost somewhere in the pursuit of more. Sarah Mitchell was different, though. I met her at a fundraiser in Orange County, California, one of those pretentious affairs in Newport Beach where the wealthy pretended to care about causes while networking for their next business deal. She worked for a nonprofit, had kind eyes, and refused my advances 3 times before finally agreeing to dinner. "You're not a good man, Marcus," she told me on our 5th date, as we watched the sunset from Huntington Beach Pier. "But I see something in you, a flicker, like you're buried under all this darkness." I laughed. "There's nothing to see, Sarah. This is who I am." "No," she insisted, her hand touching mine. "This is who you've become. There's a difference." For 2 years, Sarah tried to reach that buried man she believed existed. She took me to church in Los Angeles County, first to a small congregation in Pasadena, then to larger services in downtown LA. I went to please her, sitting in the back row, checking my phone, counting the minutes until I could leave. The pastors talked about redemption, grace, forgiveness, words that bounced off me like rubber bullets off Kevlar. I had done things that would make hardened criminals flinch. I had destroyed families, ruined lives, built an empire on suffering. If there was a God, I had long since crossed the line where his mercy would reach. Everything collapsed on a Tuesday in Miami-Dade County, Florida. The DEA had been building a case for 18 months. They had wiretaps, informants, paper trails I thought I'd burned. The raid came at dawn, helicopters over South Beach, agents flooding my hotel suite, automatic weapons pointed at my head as I was dragged from bed and thrown against marble floors. Sarah was there. She had stayed the night, still believing, still hoping. The look on her face as they handcuffed me, not anger but profound sadness, would haunt me for years. "I'll wait for you," she said as they led me away. "Don't," I told her. "I'm not worth it." A federal detention in Broward County was a concrete hell where time moved like cold molasses. My lawyer said I was looking at 40 years minimum. With my record, my network, the sheer volume of evidence, I would die in prison. I was 32 years old and my life was over. The other inmates either feared me or wanted to prove themselves by taking me down. I fought constantly, brutal, meaningless violence that left me bloodied and empty. Guards threw me in solitary after I nearly killed a man who had come at me with a shiv. In that 6x8 cell in Broward County Jail, with nothing but concrete walls and a steel toilet, the darkness finally consumed me completely. I decided to end it. I had nothing left. No future, no hope, no reason to continue. I had hurt everyone who had ever tried to love me. The world would be better without Marcus Chen polluting it. But before I could act, something impossible happened. It was 3 a.m. I know because I could hear the guards changing shifts, their boots echoing down the corridor. In the absolute darkness of that cell, I saw light. Not metaphorical light. Actual physical illumination that had no source, no explanation. It filled the cell, warm and encompassing, and I heard a voice. Not an audible voice, but something deeper. Words that formed in my mind with crystalline clarity. "Marcus, I have been waiting for you to stop running." I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. "I'm losing my mind," I whispered. "No, you're finally ready to find it." And then, impossible as it sounds, I saw my life, not in flashes, but in complete panoramic detail. Every choice, every victim, every moment of cruelty and selfishness. But I also saw moments I had forgotten. The homeless man in Travis County, Texas, whose shelter I had anonymously funded after Sarah mentioned the need. The single mother in Hamilton County, Ohio, whose medical bills I had paid when I overheard her crying in a cafe. Small lights in an ocean of darkness. "You think you're beyond redemption," the voice continued, "but I don't measure worthiness. I offer grace. The question is, will you accept it?" I broke. 32 years of armor shattered in an instant. I collapsed to that filthy cell floor and wept. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place I didn't know still existed. I cried for my mother, for Sarah, for every life I had damaged. I cried for the boy in Louisville who had wanted so badly to be someone that he became a monster. "I don't know how," I choked out. "I don't know how to be anything else." "Then let me show you." If you're listening to this and thinking it sounds impossible, I understand. I would have mocked this story 2 years ago. But here's what I want you to know. Wherever you are right now, whatever you've done, however far you think you've fallen, it's not too far. That's not religious platitude. That's the truth I lived. Take a moment right now. If this story is resonating with you, if you see pieces of yourself in my darkness, I want you to do something. Subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but for yourself. Because the rest of this story might be exactly what you need to hear. And share this with someone who needs to know that impossible conversions happen. Someone who thinks they're too far gone. Be that bridge for them. The light faded, but something had fundamentally shifted. I felt clean. For the first time in over a decade, the weight I had carried, the guilt, the shame, the emptiness, had lifted. Not disappeared, but become bearable. I called for the guards and asked for a Bible. They laughed. "Chen getting religion? That's rich." But they brought one. A worn King James version. Pages yellowed and torn. I started in Genesis and read straight through. Words that had been meaningless noise when Sarah dragged me to church now blazed with meaning. Stories of murderers redeemed, prostitutes honored, thieves promised paradise, people who had been darkness transformed into light. My trial was in Palm Beach County, Florida. The prosecution painted me as a monster, and they weren't wrong. They had photos, testimonies, evidence of devastation my operation had caused. Families destroyed by addiction, young men dead from overdoses, a trail of suffering stretching from San Diego County, California, to Suffolk County, New York. My public defender was overwhelmed and underpaid. "Best case scenario, we plea down to 30 years, he told me. "More likely, you're looking at life." "I deserve it," I said. He looked surprised. "That's not the attitude." "I'm not going to lie anymore," I interrupted. "Not to the court, not to myself, not to God. Whatever happens, I accept it." The judge was a hard woman named Margaret Thornton, who had built her career on maximum sentences for drug traffickers. She had lost a nephew to overdose in Fulton County, Georgia. I was exactly the kind of person she had dedicated her life to removing from society. I pled guilty to all charges, stood before that court and took responsibility for every crime, every victim, every ounce of pain I had caused. My lawyer looked horrified, but I felt free. Truth, after years of lies, was its own form of liberation. Judge Thornton stared at me for a long moment. "Mr. Chen, I have reviewed your case extensively. The damage you've caused is incalculable. Families are broken. Children are orphaned. Communities are devastated. Yes, Your Honor. Is there anything you want to say before I pass sentence?" I thought of that cell in Broward County. The light, the voice, the impossible grace offered to an impossible case. "Your Honor, I can't undo what I've done. I can't bring back the dead or restore the families I've broken. I deserve whatever punishment you give me. But I want you to know, I'm not the same man who committed those crimes. Something happened to me in that jail cell. I encountered grace. Real, impossible grace. And for the first time in my life, I want to be better. Not to escape consequences, but because I finally understand what it means to be human. The courtroom was silent. Judge Thornton's expression was unreadable. Mr. Chen, I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've heard every sob story, every manipulation, every attempt to game the system. Most of it is performance. She paused. But there's something different here. I see it in your eyes. I don't know what happened to you in jail, but you're not the man in these arrest photos. She sentenced me to 18 years with possibility of parole in 12. My lawyer nearly fainted. It was a miracle by any legal standard. But I knew it was more than that. It was the first tangible sign that the light in that cell had been real. Federal prison in Sumter County, Florida, became my monastery. I read everything I could find about faith, theology, redemption. I joined the prison ministry, started leading Bible studies, counseled other inmates struggling with addiction and guilt. The old Marcus would have seen this as weakness. The new Marcus understood it was the hardest, most important work I'd ever done. Sarah visited every month, driving down from Orange County, California, a 3-hour flight plus a 2-hour drive through rural Florida. She never missed a visit in 4 years. Why? I asked her during one visit, watching her through the scratched plexiglass. Why do you keep coming? Because I told you I'd wait, she said simply. And because I see what God is doing in you. You're becoming the man I always knew was buried in there. I served 8 years before parole. 8 years of therapy, education, spiritual transformation. I earned 2 degrees through correspondence courses, one in counseling, one in theology. I worked in the prison library, tutored inmates for their GED, mediated disputes. The man who had built an empire on destruction now spent his days building up broken men. The parole board hearing was in Leon County, Florida. 5 stern faces reviewing my file, skeptical of any redemption story. But they couldn't argue with the evidence. Spotless prison record, countless letters of support from guards and inmates, documented transformation. Mr. Chen, the board chairman said, what guarantee do we have that you won't return to your former life? None, I answered honestly. I can't prove the future, but I can tell you that the man who committed those crimes is dead. He died in a cell in Broward County when he finally surrendered to something bigger than himself. The man before you is someone different, someone who wakes up every day grateful for the chance to make even tiny amends for massive wrongs. They granted parole with strict conditions: 10 years supervised release, regular drug testing, mandatory community service, restriction from certain counties where my former network operated. I walked out of Coleman Federal Correctional Complex on a Tuesday morning, 8 years after entering. Sarah was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a Honda Civic, smiling. Ready to start your new life? She asked. I don't even know what that looks like. Good, she said. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. We settled in Franklin County, Ohio, just outside Columbus. Far from my old networks, my old life, my old temptations. I got a job at a nonprofit in Cuyahoga County, counseling former inmates trying to reintegrate into society. The pay was a fraction of what I once made illegally in a day, but I had never felt richer. Sarah and I married in a small ceremony in Fairfield County, Ohio, with 20 people in attendance, mostly from her church, the community that had prayed for me during my entire incarceration. No luxury, no pretension, just simple vows exchanged before God and witnesses. We bought a modest house in a neighborhood where people still hung their laundry outside and knew their neighbors' names. I planted a garden, something I had never done, never had patience for. Watching seeds become plants, tending life instead of destroying it, felt like its own form of redemption. But the real work was internal. The darkness I had lived in for so long doesn't just disappear. It waits, patient, for moments of weakness. There were nights I woke up sweating, dreaming of my old life, the power, the respect, the fear. There were moments I saw former associates on the news, flaunting wealth, and felt a whisper of envy. In those moments, I went back to that memory, the light in the cell, the voice, the impossible grace. I reminded myself that I had been offered something infinitely more valuable than anything I had lost. I started speaking at churches throughout Franklin County and beyond, Montgomery County, Ohio, Marion County, Indiana, Wayne County, Michigan, small congregations and large, anyone who would listen. I told my story raw and unfiltered. The crimes, the darkness, the impossible moment when light broke through. If God can reach me, I told them, He can reach anyone. There is no pit so deep that His grace can't go deeper. No sin so dark that His light can't penetrate. No person so lost that they can't be found. After one talk in Allen County, Indiana, a man approached me. He was in his early 20s, eyes haunted, body language screaming addict. "Is it real?" he asked. "This transformation you talk about, or is it just words?" I looked at him and saw myself at his age, hungry, lost, building walls to keep pain out, but only trapping it inside. "It's real," I said, "but it's not easy. Transformation requires surrender. You have to stop running, stop fighting, stop trying to fix yourself. You have to fall into grace and trust it will catch you." "I don't know if I can." "You can't," I agreed. "That's the point. You can't save yourself. None of us can. But He can. The question is, are you tired enough to let Him?" His name was Brandon. He entered rehab the next week, with Sarah and me helping him navigate insurance and placement. 6 months later, he was clean, working, and volunteering at the same church where I had spoken. Small miracles, rippling outward. Before I finish this testimony, I need you to understand something. This isn't about a magic moment that fixes everything instantly. The light in that cell was real, the transformation was real, but it was also the beginning of the hardest work of my life. Every day I choose redemption over regression. Every day I fight the darkness that still whispers familiar temptations. But here's what I've learned. We don't fight alone. If this story has impacted you, if you see yourself in any part of my journey, I'm asking you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this, testimonies of impossible transformations, of grace reaching into darkness, of hope when everything seemed hopeless. Let these stories be fuel for your own journey. Second, share this. You probably know someone who needs to hear it. Someone who thinks they're too far gone, too broken, too lost. Someone sitting in their own darkness, convinced the light will never come. Be the person who shows them it can. Be the bridge between their despair and their hope. 5 years have passed since my release. I'm now the director of a reentry program in Franklin County, Ohio, serving over 200 former inmates annually. We help with housing, employment, counseling, spiritual guidance, everything I needed and often didn't get. Sarah and I have 2 children now, Emma, 3, and Daniel, 18 months. They will grow up knowing their father's story, the whole story. They will understand that darkness exists, but light is stronger. That redemption is real, that no one is beyond grace. Sometimes I drive through Nashville, past the honky-tonks where I spent that last night of my old life. The neon signs still flicker. The music still pours into the streets of Davidson County. But the man who drove those streets in 2016 is gone. He died in a jail cell in Broward County, surrendered his crown of darkness, and was reborn in light. I still carry scars. Physical from prison fights, emotional from lives I damaged, spiritual from years lived in opposition to everything good. But scars are proof of healing. They're evidence that wounds can close, that broken things can mend, that dead things can live again. Last month, I received a letter from Judge Margaret Thornton, the woman who sentenced me in Palm Beach County. She's retired now, living in Pinellas County, Florida. The letter was brief. "Mr. Chen, I followed your parole progress. I've seen the work you're doing. I wanted you to know that in 23 years on the bench, I've seen maybe 3 genuine transformations. Yours is one of them. Thank you for proving that the justice system can sometimes actually produce justice. Keep being a light." I keep that letter on my desk, next to a photo from that cell. Yes, I requested it from the county, a reminder of where I was and how far grace has carried me. On hard days, when the darkness whispers that I'm still that man, still broken, still unworthy, I look at them and remember. I faced the darkness, and the light faced me back. This is my testimony. I was lost, and now I'm found. I was dead, and now I'm alive. I was darkness, and now I'm learning, daily, to be light. It wasn't impossible after all. It was grace. And if it can happen to Marcus Chen, drug dealer, criminal, man who had given up on himself and been given up on by society, then it can happen to anyone, including you, especially you. The darkness is not the end of the story. It's just the setting that makes the light shine brighter. Welcome to the beginning of yours.